There's no fish here anymore in the rivers, in close to the beaches, which is the easiest way to get fish because they have, they spend less on fuel to get out there. But now their propellers get stuck in nets and packaging, so they can't do the job that their grandparents have been doing. Now you change it from fish to plastic and try to pay them, if not more than what they were getting it for before.
So today I'm super excited. We got Tom Jackson coming all the way from Indonesia. Tom, how you doing?
I'm really good. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to jump into it.
You co-founded a company called Honest Ocean. What do you do?
Well, we basically work with brands to manage their supply chains from source all the way through to the manufacturing application, what they need, what that plastic needs to be able to do. So I kind of started with collecting in the ocean and trying to go that way, and that didn't work. So we've kind of had to control each step of it. So Honest Ocean really works across the whole supply chain, all the way back into that resin going back into recycled products.
Okay, so then you guys are collecting ocean plastic, ocean-bound plastic. Like, you're in Indonesia. I've spent some time in Indonesia, and everybody pictures Bali, right? They picture the crystal clear ocean, the beautiful white sand beaches, and just like perfection. But you're in the water all the time. I see the surfboard in the background. Like, what's the reality of the beaches in Indonesia?
It's pretty terrifying. It's a great example of how not to get it right as a country and as a government system. But between December to February, that's when it's really bad. And the first 7 to 8 foot of the beach is plastic mixed in with that seaweed. Once you get through that, it gets a little easier to move in the water, but you're getting all sorts. You're getting recyclable, high-value plastics in the ocean. You're getting unrecyclable sachets and PET bottle labels, all sorts. It's pretty scary at the moment.
All right, so I'm picturing my tourist towel on the sand, and then as I walk into the water, like the first 8 feet of water is just like I'm wading through plastic.
Yeah, and when you're paddling out on the board, which I try and get out most days, between those time frame of the year, you're kind of moving plastic as you pull through the water. And like you said, when you're with your beach towel on the beach, you've got to find a spot where you've got to move plastic first to be able to lay that towel down. So the rest of the time of the year, it's not great, but there's so many issues when it comes to this, and yeah, it's a really, really good example of how terrifyingly bad it can be. Indonesia's kind of shown the rest of the world that.
Is that local plastic that you're seeing on the beach?
Yeah, it is a mix, but 95% of it is local. You've got the rainy season here. People discard waste down riverbanks, and of course that all rushes out into the ocean, and then that will come back in with the tide. I have seen some overseas waste as I've moved through landfills and stuff like that, but in the ocean it's usually local.
Is that because there's not a recycling system or collection system? Like, what's happening on the ground in terms of what's leading people to just culturally just throw plastic into riverbeds?
There really isn't much here, so you have almost no waste management. So since plastic's been around here, at least the kind of 70 years, it's all been burnt. You'll see it on the side of the road. You're driving on a bike or a scooter, you'll see a little pile just burning there. It will have organic waste on there, plastic, and this is kind of how they've done with it. And it's really a no action kind of government that's taken charge of that or not prioritized it. And now, like, for example, the island of Bali, which is a very small part of Indonesia, but has the most tourist traction through there. You've got hundreds of thousands of hotels, waste everywhere, landfills.
All right, let's take a quick second to talk about idpdirect.com. Go right to that website, download the design guides, the sustainability guides, the recyclable icon guide, which basically lists out all the different icons. It gives them to you in vectors. You can drop them right into your artwork right now, today, and go right into production. All right, back to the pod.
And then you got the temperature on top of that. You got stuff like glass in landfills. And I think last year, and I think it was 6 weeks, we had 31 landfill fires across Indonesia. So yeah, not ideal.
That's the reality. And I think as a packaging designer, it's like, all right, how can I help brand X reduce the amount of packaging that they have or create some packaging that's going to be recyclable in most places. But you also have to kind of think about like who else is going to be using this product. And it may be a location, not necessarily Indonesia, but they may not have the same collection system. So it's important to kind of figure out like what's happening on the ground, where your product's going to be sold, and how can they repurpose it, right? So there's, from my understanding, you're collecting plastic, then you're reprocessing it and trying to sell it back in to brands as like, as a recycled plastic to clear up some of the stuff that's going to the oceans.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not so much the blaming part of, the material here. It's more of, right, okay, this situation's here. How do we work backwards and partner with the big companies that are producing a lot of material? Early on we found some great partners who really like the mission of what we're doing. And yeah, being able to get to that scale, being able to recycle, yourself as a kind of packaging guru on this, there's so many different types of materials, and they all need to have a home and a second life. So yeah, being able to collect as much as we can, but then also use as much as that. Nowhere's got it right. We're trying to do a unique system that works here, but the United States, UK, Germany, we're all still exporting waste to countries like Indonesia, and the time is now, and it's pretty interesting to be in this time frame of kind of packaging and recycling, because now everyone's trying to recycle their own waste, but there's still waste from all sorts of plastics.
Yeah, no, and there's still waste from 30 years ago still that we've got to deal with, right? It's like we're cramming for a test, and the test is tomorrow, and it's like you just can't learn, and you just can't catch up with everything that you need to do in order to execute it tomorrow. So because there's so many different types of plastics, how are you collecting it and then sorting it? Like, how big is your team, and how does this work?
Yeah, so it was really about the people on the ground who live in these communities. So generally it's poorer communities that end up with this waste, on their front door. Coastal kind of communities is really what we focus on. So you've got that recycled, ocean bound, all those kind of different things that people talk about, but we really focus on coastal and before that. So we'll work with those communities, identify the problems, and ideally work with a waste bank there, which is literally a really small building and usually a kind of chief style leader in that community that will help accumulate waste and work with other individuals in that community to collect that, and we'll kind of act as their sales channel. So we'll stimulate more collection from them through the increase of sales from our side. And that's really important that, the collection is done by them and they're getting paid properly. I think it's 22% of Indonesians have full-time work. So being able to supply them with full-time contracted work through the sales of that material is really important, making sure they're getting that insurance. That's step one of how that works. And then we tap into the recycling network that's already established here in Indonesia. We connect those two links together. And then once those two are set up, the third link will be us working with that brand partner to work out what quality that needs to be from the recyclers. And then that will either get exported to the country that they manufacture in, or, we'll find a manufacturer in Asia for them.
You're collecting locally in Indonesia with these small groups, and then are you processing it down and pelletizing it, or how far are you taking it?
All the way. Pelletizing, but all domestically. So we've got a small operation in Thailand, a bigger one in Indonesia, and that will all be done in country, and then that material is ready to go as pellets. So we're really reducing the amount of material travels, but also trying to stimulate growth in the local economy through more sales, which might mean that a recycling company might have to change their equipment here because it's not up to standard for overseas grade. But if they can see the orders coming off the back of that, that's an easy business decision for them. So that's kind of, we're trying to motivate and stimulate all parts of the supply chain in order for it to all grow together. Because before we got here, none of those parts of the supply chain were all talking to each other. It was, I'm a recycling center in this area. I'll speak to 5 or 10 waste banks around me, and I'll make sure I've got enough material. That's where that job ends in terms of sourcing, and then they find customers. So being able to link it all the way back through to that person picking up that bottle, all the way through to connecting that to a brand, let's say in California or wherever that product ends up on a shelf. That's a message that we want to create. I didn't realize how much work it would be, but we're getting there at this stage. We're getting to it where we can track and trace.
Yeah, no, that's crazy, man. So then you're picking it up, processing it, connecting to your next step, which is manufacturer. What's the benefit to the manufacturer to work with Honest Ocean in your group versus them just getting something local?
It really is about the story. If we're supplying material which is the same grade that they have locally to them, those are two identical products essentially, and it's really about the impact that we can change. We can show them through that, and hopefully that's something that their customers and then the consumer after that really kind of can really connect with. And whether that equals in a couple of cents higher in the cost, we've seen with most of our customers that people are happy to pay that tiny little bit more if they can track the impact of their dollar purchase and why that has gone that extra mile.
Yeah. If I'm a manufacturer, if I'm a brand and I'm looking for a recycled plastic, yeah, I can get some recycled PET locally and put it in the bottle and just put the little symbol on there that's been recycled. Great. Put it out there. No big deal. But if I can connect it back to the beach, and I think as consumers, we're hearing a ton of this stuff about, a lot of our waste gets shipped. We're seeing things in Brazil, in Indonesia, in parts of Africa where it's just filth and trash. And it's like, okay, if I can be a part of the solution to clean up some of that, then as a consumer, it's like I feel a little bit better about that purchase, right? Then I connect to the recyclability of this. It might even prompt me to recycle more myself versus just seeing a regular old recyclable product.
Absolutely. And if we can collect the source and the consumer, which are really the two most important parts of the supply chain, if we can connect those two together and be able to share a moment, a story, a product, that's a pretty cool thing to do, which I don't know what other form you could connect a tiny village, on a random island, which there are 17,000 of here, to, someone in a Target or something like that. That's a whole story which everyone, especially the consumer, is a part of. That's really what we're trying to create. We're trying to add more than just this is a product in packaging that you've seen before. Like this is a product in packaging which has changed the lives of people, which you've helped fund through purchasing of this. That's kind of what we're trying to storytell.
For a brand that kind of pulls in that ESG component, right? Where now I'm taking care of the environment, just people and process essentially.
Yeah. So the message is really, and the ESG is kind of the first place to look at it before you even talk about material and the standards that needs to come at. This is the identified area of, what we can bring in here through this. So the community will look at, clean water in there, women empowerment through that. And most of the women are running all of these waste operations across Indonesia. They're forces to be reckoned with. They're seriously powerful people that, ladies that have been brought up in a really hard place, and they keep the men in check. So there's a lot of that already. So we connect that together. And of course, environment is the biggest part of that. But changing lives through plastic collection, it's not just plastic recycling. So many things stem from that. How the money goes back into that community and how that has been seen, through demonstrations of being able to, invest in new boats, being able to create or drill for new wells. So they've actually got local water there. There's no fish here anymore in the rivers, in close to the beaches, which is the easiest way to get fish because they have, they spend less on fuel to get out there. But now their propellers get stuck in nets and packaging, so they can't do the job that, their grandparents have been doing. Now you change it from fish to plastic and try to pay them, if not more than what they were getting it for before. So there's so much of that ESG that really fits into the operation of the collection. And then you talk about upstream of, where that material is going to and what you need and trying to find that brand to really bring that together. Yeah, and it's not for everyone, you know. That's some people. Some people are just doing packaging, you know, material R&D. Some are just doing ESG. To be able to bring that all together, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, no, I bet, man. So I'm at the beach in Indonesia. I can just picture the amount of plastic that's out there. What's the separation like, and what are the plastics that you're offering, right? Because there's so many different types. So is it just like a combination of some, or are you trying to process as much of it as possible?
Yeah. So for the last sort of 3 or 4 years since we've been running, we've been working with the mainly recyclable ones. You've got PET, PP, and HDP. So bottle caps, that kind of repo we're working with, also the actual bottle. And here they have a really high rate of single use, kind of 200 mil, 300 mil cups, which you just pierce a straw through, which has a PET film. Those are really good feedstock. We do a lot of that, and that's clean. It's had water in before. We can recycle that. But that is 35% of what you collect. You know, the rest of the material you're bringing in is unrecyclable waste. So we're actually kind of in that pivoting phase at the moment where we're trying to really look at what are we going to do with all the other waste. And, you know, furniture, of course, is a good option for all that. But being able to find a machine that can take all of these sachets, which have got aluminium, they've got a little bit of PVC in there, you know, all of these materials, and we're trying to find homes for that. And to be able to find a machine that can do that, you know, I haven't found it yet. Still on the hunt for that. But we played with pyrolysis, chemical recycling for a long time. But you put a crap product in, you know, you're getting a crap product out. So, you know, you need a clean plastic film, you know, to be able to use and put in back into oil. Otherwise, you just have a sludge and terrible kind of fuel that you're processing. So we're just trying to, you know, we're trying to get to that point now where we can pilot a machine that, you know, is creating either charcoal pellets or something from just burning the hell out of this waste, being able to capture that and the water that's in there. We can collect that water, which will then turn into steam through the heating. We can then use that to power a machine. And then from there, we can find a product, you know, that can be used at scale. You know, it has to be able to make money. It can't be involved with the government. And if anyone's listening, that's the biggest value add that we're really looking for. We've got pretty much all the resources we need to get it running. But yeah, we're looking for a machine that can really help us just feed dirty, horrible waste into it. Because the stuff that's on the beach, and if anyone's telling you they're recycling stuff from the ocean or in that ocean, then yeah, I don't believe it anymore. There's stuff you can do mix with virgin plastic, new plastic. But
Method Soap was like one of the first ones that actually pulled plastic out of the ocean, and then they processed it with some virgin, you know, plastics, and it was like such a super tight limited edition bottle because they're like, most of this stuff is just garbage. It didn't process well. You know, you can't control the color, and they did it to show that it could be done, but they're like, you can't do it at scale. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So if people are telling you this is, you know, ocean plastic, it's, you know, it's that ocean bound marketing material where it's like 30 miles from the ocean or something like that. But you guys are pulling it before it gets in there, before it gets degraded. But then you're also pulling a bunch of stuff that is kind of broken down and degraded and you can't necessarily process. And it's like that garbage. So you tried pyrolysis. Funny enough, I just had a guy on the podcast that did pyrolysis. He's like figuring it out on his own. He's, you know, 20-year-old kid that started when he was 17 and he built his own machine in his backyard.
Oh, I've seen that guy on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
And he's doing it in a modern way. It's, you know, yeah, he's learning. Like he was in hospital. It's not funny, but
exactly.
the guy's pushing the envelope. You've got to give him credit for that. And he's doing it, which young people can actually, or anyone through social can interact with. It's not a hidden, you know, corporation secret. He's like, I bought this stuff, I added some stuff, I folded it on, and it's working for the most part.
If finding your spec data is a wild goose chase around your office, you've got a data problem. SpecRite is the only cloud-based management specification solution that every brand needs. Because if you don't spec right, you'll spec wrong. And then I think, you know, the other thing, when we think about Indonesia, and it's like, it's not just one island, right? It's not just one location. There's like thousands of islands in this chain, but it's not like small living. Like they're big big manufacturing plants or big companies there. I know Toyota's got a plant there. Like people are producing at large volume and scale here. So there's definitely a huge industry in the area.
Yeah, 90% of it's leaving Indonesia, unfortunately. And there's a few reasons for that. Locally, the price, if we sell locally, we'll be out of business in, I don't know, 8 months. Just because overseas the price for plastic, and this is really how stupid the recycling world is. Yeah, we can get more money by sending it further away. So annoyingly and honestly, that's how we've worked so far. We're self-funded today. No one has, we haven't relied on any of those funds, and also we're careful where we take funding from here as well, especially in this space. Yeah, locally we do business and we do try and work here, but material quality is a lot lower. So you get a lower yield and a lower price. So trying to find the right partner. But as you said, Indonesia is huge. It's nearly 300 million people as a population. You've got some of the biggest brands here. People rely on cheap labor of Indonesia. You've got really close Australia, Japan, China. India's not far away too. So yeah, you've got lots of places that work here and operate. So that's really kind of where we're at, with working with big brands like Toyota here. And, I spend a bit of time in the US, and Volvo and ourselves have been trying to find something that can really work over, and spend a bit of time there just working on what material can work and really being able to showcase it, and then using that locally and throughout Asia to be able to show that as an example. It's kind of really what I'm trying to get over the fence at the moment.
I'd imagine locally sourced plastic that's cleaning the beaches, that's employing local people. If that could work its way into like the local industry, whether it's, big brands that are manufacturing there, but even just having that, like, it seems like there'd be a sense of pride in that, in seeing this, honest ocean material in a locally produced Toyota pickup or whatever, right? Like, that seems like that would be key, as like involving local, but that's not quite the way it works in Indonesia.
That's right. And generally with this world of waste, you have to be operating at such scale to be able to make money that you can grow. And, we're not at that scale. We do a couple of 100 tons a month, and that really takes up all of our time. So being able to produce products ourselves and work on other options, create sales channels, is a really big part of what comes next. But yeah, locally it's hard. And generally how the West moves, Asian companies and brands will usually follow the trends through that. So there's always a delayed response, or UK, American, German, European companies that are owned and operate here. They have a completely different team, of course, that operates over there. So, the mission, the drive, there's no communication there really. So they're running in completely different circles. So if I spend a year speaking to, one brand in 6 different locations, I'm starting again every time to be able to really tie that all together. But locally is tough for us.
I should have asked at the beginning if I was a better podcaster. How did you end up in Indonesia, man?
So I'll give you the full length if you're up to it. But I actually used to work on private super yachts for just under 8 years, and going between the Pacific, Europe, going between kind of Europe over to Florida, through the Caribbean, and then down into the South Pacific. And, from 2013 all the way up to 2017, I just watched the plastic influx, as I was on the ocean every day. It was a nightmare. And then we hit kind of a plastic berg in the South Pacific where the propellers got stuck. It was a kind of football sized pitch amount of plastic, and it really stuck with me. So I did that work for about another year, and then I created a kind of plant-based supplement tablet. And again, the packaging was all plastic. They couldn't use recycled. So after that, I then moved here, 2021, halfway through COVID. I jumped on a plane, landed, quarantined, make sure I was ready to go, and then spent 3 months visiting every single recycler in Indonesia. And, the problems, what's going right, what's going wrong, how can we help? And then after that, going into the communities, going into the beaches and speaking to these villages, which, it was a lot of sign language. I couldn't really speak much of the language back then. So lots of pointing. And it was just me at this point. It was just me, found a translator kind of in the hotel where I was quarantining. I was like, can you help me out? He was up for it. So when he had time off, we would go off and find as many of these waste banks as we could. Then moved to Bali after that, next door island. You don't have to convince me much to kind of to stay in Indonesia. I love it. Surfing, Bali's pretty cool. And then COVID passed, and then I actually now live on an island just east of Bali called Lombok, which has even more waste problems. And yeah, that's kind of how I ended up here. So it's kind of been nearly 4 years altogether. And that's the mission continues. But yeah, it's a lot of lessons and there's a lot of things that need to change. But yeah.
Man, I'm seeing a lot of people coming in from outside of Indonesia, moving to Indonesia and starting some type of environmental program, right? I know there's a few different people there that collect river plastics. I'm not sure. Do you know Nina Van Tulan? She does the Indonesian Waste Platform, but I'm not seeing a lot of locals kind of pushing for this.
Yeah, the government structure is an issue. The elections change a lot, and there's a lot of people that are in those positions that maybe shouldn't be, and maybe how we can help. We've grown up in a world where having separate bins, with plastic, do it as a kid and you do it when you're younger. So having that knowledge and coming into a country, you get here and you're like, oh, this is a nightmare. But, people who've grown up here have been like, this has been life. I don't know anything else. But, there's lots of countries close by, like Singapore, they've got the big carbon capture burn furnace, which is a great example of how to do it right. And it's as simple as a mismanage of funds, the prioritizing of cleaning this plastic up. It doesn't, reciprocate the amount of tourists or people that are coming through. So you can't get ahead of that. But there is the opportunity now that we can jump plastic recycling. Mechanical recycling is, you have 100 tons of plastic, you create 10 tons of waste. I don't believe in that system really. But now with the technology, you've got other systems where you can really help create the technology or have the technology to be able to create just a feeding mouth for all this waste and being able to, capture carbon and then things like that. That requires hundreds of millions of, dollars of investment, which needs to be found somehow from here. But it's going to take a serious local individual to change that whole system out here. And there have been some great environmental ministers which have been really strong, really pushing, ready to go. But, the elections get in the way a lot. But yeah, I'm still really hopeful for what people can bring in. But through my eyes, it's privatizing it now. So it's working as a startup, as a business, as foreigners coming in, working with locals. That's absolutely fine. But in order to grow that, you need to have control of how that runs, because the scale of what needs to be done here is so high that it's bringing everyone together. It's not, pointing at government saying that's not right. It's showcasing what people can do as a private entity. And then once you create that, hopefully that support will come. But it's not relying on that. And being able to create a profitable way of doing that without government funds is a really hard thing to do. And there was some amazing ideas around crypto for good, which kind of 3 years ago I was really interested with what some people were doing. But unfortunately, of course, that never came through. But yeah, if the money can be found and if the confidence can come through, people can really make money out of this as investors, that's when stuff will really start rolling and stuff will really start changing quickly. But if it's a business that is just making money to run, then you're gonna struggle to get people excited about that.
No, and I think what you guys are doing is amazing. The fact that you've got, again, down from the collectors to the processing and everything in between, and everybody's working together. That's an amazing feat just in and of itself in Indonesia. Right. And I'm familiar with the process. I got, my team is in Jakarta. We're trying to make this production facility solar powered, but all the solar panels you want on here, 100% will support you, but you just can't connect it to the grid. because that's not allowed. And you're like, what do you mean? Like, I can do this, but I can't plug in my machine. I can't collect the energy from it. They're like, no, you can't.
Yeah. It's
And
crazy.
coming from, the Western side, you're like, what do you mean? Just plug it in. It's like, no, that's not how it works, man. As we start wrapping up here, if we talk about like who would be a perfect partnership for you, like who would be the brand, that you'd want to connect with. I know we've got listeners at all sorts of different brands, like food, product, like what would be the key person or company that would be able to collect this material and make something really cool with it that'd be able to push you guys to the next level?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, food, packaging, kind of longer lasting products, kind of the Tupperware styles of the world is really somewhere we can produce, PP material at food grade is an option, but longer lasting products too. So a lot of the big companies that are consuming a lot of plastic. So it's of course a lot of packaging companies, but automotive, we're trying to get a material spec to a level where we can put that into any kind of vehicle. And, that's thousands of tons a month that are going through that manufacturing line. So that's kind of a dream. Whether we can do that in the next 5 years, yeah, it depends on those partnerships. But yeah, really big on that packaging side. And yeah, I would say those two are the biggest in terms of being able to try and find that. Clothing is a little bit harder, creating fabric. People are moving away from that kind of polyester plastic. So we don't dive too much into that. And again, you need to be at such scale to be able to make that work financially.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you're saying a longer lasting product, right? Not just necessarily packaging. So in automotive, something that's going to last for the next 20, 30 years before it gets processed again. There's companies like Trex that makes decking material out of plastics. At Fiskars and you're designing, the next vehicle, or if you're at Tesla designing the next Cybertruck, right? And you're putting together some materials like, well, I could use a recycled plastic here that's local, or I can create an entire business in Indonesia and collect a lot of this waste that's on the beaches and help remove some of this trash versus just processing local. Then, Honest Ocean is where you should be looking, man, 100%.
Yeah, and that's really it. It's not us against everyone else. I think if you can do it locally, that's awesome. Reduce that carbon. I love it. But if you want to be able to show long-term change and really understand how bad this place is and places like it, and how that partnership can transform lives, that's a pretty cool mission to have and companies to be involved with.
Yeah, no, that's rad, man. Hey, can you foam this stuff? Can you make surfboards out of this?
Yeah, we're actually gonna knock out some fins, but we're gonna do that ourselves. We're just gonna do a kind of container build set up, hopefully over the next few months, which we can do that. But yeah, surfboards will be another use. There's definitely parts of the surfboard, the epoxy and stuff like that. Yeah, we're gonna play with everything. Yeah.
Well, that's the cool part, right? Is you get to test and R&D and show like what you can make. I mean, I'd love to see an Honest Ocean board out there and kind of just showing people that it's kind of where this started, like where you're collecting everything from the ocean and putting it back in. Amazing, man. What's the best place for somebody to find out more about Honest Ocean and connect with you?
So honest-ocean.com is a website. We're just having it changed a little at the moment, but just through LinkedIn, I'm super active on there, like yourself. So I think it's Tom Jackson or Honest Ocean, then the search bar, you should get it.
Yeah, no, and I'll have links in here to connect with you on LinkedIn and learn more about the company and the website. So if anybody's out there, again, if you're putting a plastic into a product, if you're putting plastic into packaging, check out Honest Ocean before you make a decision on what material you're using and make a difference.